The metal door stood open. The bars looked small, and the man inside the police station looked even bigger. He was over 7 feet tall. His shoulders nearly touched both walls. When he stood up, his head brushed the ceiling lights. Officers whispered. The room felt tense. No one knew what to do next, because this was not a normal prisoner, and the night was only just beginning. Hours earlier, the city was loud and bright. People filled the streets after a long day. Music spilled from bars. Laughter floated through the air. Then someone noticed him, a giant among regular people. His steps were slow. His hands were huge. Every eye turned when he passed. Some stared in fear. Some stared in wonder. He was famous. People recognized him. This was André the Giant. But fame did not protect him that night. The call came in just after sunset. A large man, causing concern, blocking a hotel hallway. No violence. No fight. Just the problem no one had seen before. Police arrived expecting trouble. What they found was confusion. André stood quietly. He looked tired. His breathing was heavy, slow, deep. He did not run. He did not resist. He only asked one question. Where am I supposed to go? The officers looked at each other. They had arrested people before, thousands of times, but never someone like this. Handcuffs did not fit. The patrol car was too small. They tried one vehicle, then another. Nothing worked. Finally, a larger transport was called. People gathered. Cameras appeared. Whispers spread. The giant was being taken away. At the station, silence fell. André sat on a reinforced bench. It creaked under his weight. Paperwork stopped. Phones rang unanswered. One officer measured him with his eyes. Another shook his head. No cell fits him, someone said. They checked the holding area. Bars too close. Ceilings too low. Beds too small. Every solution failed. And the clock kept ticking. This was not how legends were supposed to look. André had been called gentle. Fans said he was kind. Children said he smiled. But here he was. Alone. Tired. Waiting. The system did not know what to do with the giant. As hours passed, officers searched records. Had this ever happened before? A prisoner too big for jail. They found nothing. No guide. No rulebook. Just one hard fact. If something went wrong tonight, history would remember it. They tried to talk to him. André answered softly. His voice was calm, deep. He said he was exhausted. He said traveling hurt his body. He said people always stared. One officer listened closely. Another noticed his hands shaking slightly. Not from anger. From pain. Outside, rumors spread fast. A giant is locked up. They can't hold him. The jail isn't strong enough. The story grew bigger by the minute. Back inside, a final decision was made. No cell. No bars. They placed him in an open area. 2 officers stayed nearby. Not to guard him, but to make sure he was safe. The night slowed down. The lights hummed. André sat quietly, thinking. Then something unexpected happened. An officer returned with old records. Photos. Notes. And a look of shock on his face. He whispered to the others. This isn't the first time, he said. There's more to his story. The room went still, because what they found suggested that this night was not an accident, and the truth about the giant had been hidden for years. The papers were old, their edges yellowed and brittle. They were typed on machines no one had used for decades. The officer laid them on the desk, one by one, the faint smell of dust rising into the air. Every single page carried the same name, André the Giant. The room, already cold, seemed to drop a few more degrees. Because this wasn't the first time the system had failed to hold him. Years earlier, long before this city, long before this night, there had been another arrest. Another misunderstanding, another crowd of gawking onlookers, another jail that was simply not built for a man like him. The report from back then said the exact same thing. Subject too large for standard detention. There was no cell that could fit him, no restraints that could bind him, no protocol for what to do. The system, it turned out, had no place for a giant. Back then, the officers had done the same thing they were doing now. They kept him sitting in a chair. They watched him carefully, a mix of awe and apprehension in their eyes. They waited for orders that never came, for a solution that didn't exist. And just like tonight, the case quietly disappeared into the bureaucratic ether. No charges were ever filed. No headlines hit the papers. It was almost as if someone, somewhere, wanted it all forgotten. The officer reading the old file swallowed hard, the dryness in his throat suddenly noticeable. This keeps happening, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The captain, a woman who had seen almost everything, leaned closer. "How many times?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the stack of papers. The officer shook his head slowly, enough to notice a pattern. Across the room, André the Giant sat perfectly still, his long legs stretched out before him, his massive hands resting on his knees. He could feel their eyes on him. He always could. His entire life had been defined by stares. People looked first, and if they were brave enough, asked questions later. His mind drifted back to his childhood, to a small, quiet village in France. He had been big even then. Too big for the school desks, their wooden tops pressing into his chest. Too big for the beds, his feet hanging off the end. Too big for the silence of a small town. He heard the whispers whenever he walked by. Some people were kind, their faces filled with a gentle curiosity. Some were afraid, quickly pulling their children closer. And some treated him like a problem that needed fixing, a puzzle that didn't fit. As he grew older, his size became his livelihood. The whispers turned into cheers. The stares came through the bright flashes of cameras. The world gave him a title, the Eighth Wonder. But behind the roar of the crowd, there was a constant, grinding pain. His bones hurt. His joints ached with a fire that never went out. Sleep was a luxury he could rarely afford, and privacy was an absolute impossibility. Back at the station, the captain was facing a hard truth. This man wasn't dangerous. She knew that in her gut. But the situation was. If something went wrong, if he panicked, or if someone else made a mistake, the blame would fall squarely on him. Or worse, it would be blamed on the giant, the spectacle, the myth. She started making calls. Then she made more. Lawyers, supervisors, medical staff. Everyone she spoke to asked the same bewildered question. Why is he there? And nobody, not a single person, had a good answer. A doctor finally arrived near midnight. She was professional, calm, and walked right up to André. She examined him carefully, checking his breathing, listening to his heart, observing his posture as he sat hunched in the too small chair. After a few minutes, she frowned. He shouldn't be in a cell, she said, stating the obvious. He shouldn't even be sitting here like this. The captain nodded, her expression weary. But what choice do we have? Just then, the problem got bigger. Outside, news vans were parking along the street, their satellite dishes pointing toward the station like metallic sunflowers. Someone had leaked the story. The red and blue lights of the police cars now mixed with the bright, white flashes of cameras. Reporters were whispering into microphones, their voices urgent. A giant in custody. The headline wrote itself. Inside, the tension climbed. It wasn't because of anger, but because of fear. The primal fear of doing the wrong thing. The fear of being remembered for it. The officers started moving faster, their whispers growing more frantic. They started to avoid his eyes. André noticed the change. He was an expert at reading a room. He spoke quietly, his deep voice cutting through the nervous energy. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I just want to leave." The words hung in the air, a simple, honest, and profoundly complicated request. The captain looked at the clock on the wall. Hours had passed. There were still no charges. No official complaint had been filed. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that legally justified keeping him there. She let out a long, slow breath. At that exact moment, another officer rushed in, his face pale. He held a newspaper clipping, older and more faded than the rest. His hand was shaking. "This one's different," he said, his voice strained. The headline was small, easy to miss, buried deep within the page. But the words were crystal clear. Medical experts warn, giant's condition worsens under stress. The article was about a rare illness, acromegaly, the thing that made his body grow uncontrollably, the thing that would almost certainly shorten his life, and the thing that stress, like being held in a police station for hours, could make dangerously worse. A profound silence filled the room. This was no longer about a jail cell being too small. This was about responsibility. It was about life and death. The captain made her decision. She ordered the paperwork closed. No booking, no charges. André would be released. But it had to be done quietly. When they told him, he simply nodded. There was no visible smile, no sigh of relief. Just a quiet, weary acceptance. He stood up slowly, and as he rose to his full, incredible height, the room seemed to shrink around him. He walked toward the exit, each step deliberate. Outside, the cameras flashed like a thunderstorm. The doors opened, and a rush of cold night air swept in. For a moment, he stopped and turned back to the captain. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft. Then he stepped out into the night and was swallowed by the lights. But as the doors closed behind him, a deep sense of unease settled over the captain. The files were still on her desk. The pattern was still there. A man too big for the world that was built around him. A system that failed and never learned. Somewhere in those yellowed pages was a truth that nobody wanted to face. That one day, the giant would not walk away. And when that day came, there would be no cell big enough and no excuse good enough to hold the consequences. The world learned the truth too late. By the time people stopped cheering, by the time they stopped laughing and pointing, the giant was already breaking. The morning papers did not talk about the jail. They talked about shows, crowds, tickets sold. They talked about André the Giant like he was a legend carved from stone. But stone cracks. And so did he. After the release, André vanished from the city. No press statement. No apology needed. No explanation given. The station erased his name from the daily log. Just another night. But for the captain, it stayed. She could not forget the look in his eyes. Not fear. Not anger. Just tired. Years passed. The giant kept working, traveling from country to country, sleeping in hotel rooms too small for his frame, smiling for fans who never asked if he was okay. The pain grew worse. His body kept growing, even when he begged it to stop. Doctors warned him, rest, slow down, avoid stress. But rest did not pay bills, and slowing down meant disappearing. Behind closed doors, he drank to dull the pain. Not to party, not to celebrate, to survive the night. Every step hurt. Every breath felt heavy. Yet on camera, he stood tall, unbreakable. Back at Cook County Jail, the captain retired. Her replacement never read the old files. They stayed buried. Dust thickened on the truth. Then one winter morning, the news broke. The giant was gone. Gone in a quiet hotel room. Gone without handcuffs. Gone without cameras. His heart had given out. It had simply carried too much weight for too long. The world mourned. Tributes flooded in. Stories of kindness. Stories of laughter. Stories of a gentle man trapped inside a massive body. But no one talked about the system. No one talked about the nights he had nowhere to fit. No cell. No bed. No place designed for someone like him. A journalist found the old police report years later. A single paragraph caught her eye. Asterisk subject released due to medical risk and lack of facilities. Asterisk she read it twice. Then a third time. She followed the trail. Old officers. Retired staff. Forgotten paperwork. The story came together slowly. Not of a crime, but of neglect. Experts spoke on record. Prison designers admitted it. Jails were never built for extremes. Too big. Too sick. Too different. If someone didn't fit the system pushed them out. Or crushed them. The journalist published the story. Not as a scandal. As a warning. Governments quietly updated policies. Medical holds. Special transport units. New guidelines for detainees with severe conditions. No one mentioned his name in the official documents. But he was the reason. The captain read the article from her small kitchen table. She closed her eyes. At least something changed. Today, people remember the giant as a legend. A performer. A myth. But those who know the full story remember something else. A man born into a body that never stopped growing. A system that never stopped pretending it could handle him. The truth is simple. The giant was never the danger. The danger was a world built too small. And somewhere, in a forgotten filing cabinet, a thin folder still whispers the same warning. When the system has no room for humanity, it creates tragedies no bars can contain. If you found this story as moving as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories.